Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to Solid Ground on what is the 100th episode. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? We have made 100 episodes. Don't know why I'm actually sounding surprised. I think it's a good show, and you are an amazing group of people who join me here. So welcome, as I say, to our 100th episode of Solid Ground, and welcome particularly to new viewers. You'll be accessing this across an array of platforms, and you're possibly asking, what is Solid Ground? Well, put very simply, it's where I talk live around the cultural, political, social issues which have caught my eye over the last few days, and where, well, basically I take your thoughts and questions as well. So do know that if you're on the Family First Facebook page or its YouTube channel, your comments are coming live to me here in the studio, and I'm going to get to a few of those in a moment. Know that, as I say, I can respond to those questions, and also know that you can raise questions unrelated to what I'm discussing. If there's something happening here in New Zealand or arguably around the world that you want to ask a question about, I'll do my best to engage with that. But as I say, 100 episodes, and I think that is a little bit of a milestone to celebrate. First and foremost, to thank all of you, the viewers. We started from, well, I suppose only a few people, because no one really knew about it, to now we literally have thousands, and it is incredibly humbling, and I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you who are part of this wider Solid Ground community, and thanks as well to Bob and the crew at Family First. It was Bob who had this idea. There's a whole team that work behind he and I, so we often face, if you will, the front, but behind us we have an incredible team of people. I won't embarrass them by mentioning them by name. A lot of them prefer to be working quietly, beavering away quietly in the background. But everyone from who designs these sets to producers, to the imagery, to the research, to obviously paying the bills, to all the administration, we have an amazing team of people. So as I say, 100 episodes, pretty incredible. A nice way to round out the year. And so just saying good morning to different people, as I always do, and thank you for also your very kind words. We've got Muddy Waters there, Lynette, of course. Lovely to have Carl along as well. They're actually going to be, yeah, that's lovely. Oh, we've got Food Dogs Trucking, as everyone knows, my favourite name, which always in still 100 episodes in gets me. Now we've got Jackie there and Ray Teehee, and we've got Darren, which is lovely. Got Rosie there and beautiful Taupo. Good morning along. Look, actually very kind of all these. Incredible. And good morning, Liz, and look, thanks for the wider work you do as well. It was nice to see you on that online call late last week. We've got Ian, we've got Fourth Adam, one of the great wits here. Good morning. Actually, it'll be a mixture today. Of course, there's things I complain about, but there's a few positives as well. We've got Nigel, good morning. Edmund, and thank you for your message the other day. And Sue here. Now, Sue was on Straight Talk with me, Bob, and others last night. It was great to have you along. Got Cherie there, if I'm reading that right. People have to sort of, well, I don't know if you need to appreciate or not. My team, my colleagues always find it quite funny that I work all of this off a very small laptop. And about 2/3 of the screen is about 60 little tiles or inputs where I have all the images and videos, which allow me to do, well, what I'm doing here now, switching screens. But then the other third is all your comments, and because there are so many, I have it on a very small font, so usually I can read what it says. And also, here in this 100th episode, get this, I am actually in a studio now in a treehouse. You heard me right, I'm in a treehouse. I need to do a video in the coming days so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But my neighbours have actually a modern treehouse up a tree, very close to where I live here in the eastern bays of Auckland. And they know that since Rachel and I moved, we've been a bit crammed in the house. It's a bit hard to have my studio also in the bedroom. And so about 2 weeks ago, they came very excitedly and knocked on our door and said, look, we never use it. Would you like to have it as your studio? It's obviously a tree house, but it's very private, which it is. And so since then, I've actually had electricity bought here, because obviously I couldn't run it without it. I have a Starlink outside. That's how I get this connection now. So I have a fully powered Starlink treehouse, of which I am doing my recording. So I think that's quite cool. I think that's quite cool. Look, we're going to start with a controversial topic, though maybe it isn't anymore. It's to do with Christmas. And isn't this the great power of AI? I had it generated this morning. But We're now, of course, the 2nd of December, and put your thoughts in the comments if you wish, but is now okay? Is now the okay time to put up the Christmas tree and to start playing Christmas music? I don't know exactly what the rules are here. I've always sort of been once you start December, you can start playing the Cliff Richard Christmas songs, Mariah Carey and the like, and you can put up the tree. But let me know your thoughts. Or do we have to wait? Is there another rule? Do we have to wait till, December 12th or the first weekend? I don't know. What are the rules, people? What are the rules? And so, we got December 1st coming in from some already, which is good to know. But as I say, here we are, almost at Christmas time. I'm up a treehouse. We're celebrating the 100th episode. And there's just, as always, no shortage of topics. And I must say, I think this possibly sums up the best attitude. Exactly. We can do what we like, which is good. There are some people I know, of course, who will be playing their Christmas music all year. Look, to a heavier topic, which often we do grapple with here on Solid Ground. And it's a story I think Bob also covered in Daybreak yesterday, but I wanted to bring my take to it. So this is a story of a New Zealand woman whose child was born with Down syndrome and a number of other... it's born with Down syndrome, full stop. That's the first thing. Also born with a number of medical issues. She's gone to ACC and to this point successfully claimed that this should be treated as an accident and a treatment injury. And it's been fought out in the courts. So this is a live legal situation, but the fundamentals are this woman has given birth to a child with Down syndrome, and she sees that as a bad thing. And I just want to call that out first and foremost, because I don't actually see those living or have Down syndrome as any less human than myself or with any less dignity. In fact, as to put it quite bluntly, I find this quite insulting that friends of mine who do have Down syndrome, who I think bring so much joy into the world because of their humanity, like all of ours. The second point I would make is, you can feel for this woman. It must also be a struggle. As I say, the child has a number of medical issues as well. But there's very rare, I would suggest, that we have, if you will, perfect, in inverted commas, children born. These children always have a variety of issues. I mean, my stepkids as well, myself too, we all have issues when we're born. So there's something, a difficulty here for her, I'm sure, and I want to acknowledge that. But I was thinking about this before I came on live to the studio, is put yourself in the shoes of this particular child whose mother is saying, I actually don't really want you. I actually think you're an accident. I think you're a treatment injury. And I see Anna's put a comment in here about insulting. It is, I think it's terribly insulting to this child. They're probably too young at this point to understand. But fundamentally, this is a mother who's saying, I wish you were never born. I wish you didn't have these medical conditions. I wish you didn't have Down syndrome. And I just think that's absolutely tragic and insulting, and it's a denial of fundamental human rights. The second side is trying to argue that a child born is an accident or a treatment injury. I think that's ethically wrong, morally wrong, and also legally wrong. I don't think our accident compensation system was built for, if you will, the accidents of birth. As I said at the start, I think very few human beings are born perfect. And I'm not trying to make a theological point there, but most children born, most babies, have various issues. That's just the nature of being human. And I suppose that's one of the fundamental problems that our society is now facing, is a belief that somehow we can transcend our humanity, that we can be more than human. And you might have caught some of my talks on the podcast before where we talk about transhumanism. In other words, trying to move beyond our humanity, as if we can all be born perfect, highly intellectual, good looking, no problems in life, everything is going to be fine. That is not the reality that we live in or have ever lived in as humans. Things are imperfect, things are often broken, things don't work the way we want, and fundamentally we get sick and eventually we die without being too morbid about it. And so children who are born with various issues are not an accident. They are not a treatment injury. They are not something to be claimed against by the taxpayer or for the taxpayer. It's just not appropriate. It's part of what we call the social contract. Yes, we expect the government to step in and help us, at times, but we also have to take responsibility. And the relatively simple ethical line for taking responsibility is what is normal and natural is something that we take responsibility for ourselves. And so, when a child is born with issues, we mostly manage that in our families. Obviously, if there's really serious medical issues, you will go to hospital and seek doctors and so forth. But to suggest, as this woman in this case is, that the child is an accident is wrong. And maybe that's the other point that we just need to touch on as well. There is medical care that all of us pay for, that this woman and child will be able to access. So it's not someone who's been left to the side. We have a whole health and medical industry, if you will. It's just, I think, exceptionally saddening that she sees her child, a child with Down syndrome, as somewhat lesser or a problem, something that's an accident, as something that's a treatment injury. And those last two words are what the Accident Compensation Act talk about, whether it's a treatment injury or an accident. And she's claiming because the doctors missed issues in the scans that she would have aborted the baby had she known, which I think adds an even greater level of tragedy to all of this. The idea that we should start, and we know it's happening. There's no surprise to any of us, but we know it's happening, that babies are being killed in the womb, the unborn child, because of the conditions that they may or may not have. And I say that may or may not because I also remember a very powerful speech by one of my colleagues in Parliament during the abortion debate, actually. And it's got nothing to do with this particular story, I should be clear. But she gave a very powerful testimony when she said she was going to vote against the abortion bill, because she was told when she was pregnant, so this is an MP, that her son had a whole lot of medical issues and would likely die. But she decided to keep the child. And as she spoke in Parliament, she now has a very healthy 20-plus-year-old boy. The doctors get it wrong. Again, that is quite human, I would argue to you. Medicine is as much, an art as a science. Things go wrong. Again, that's the nature of being human. So I think, again, there's just so many levels of tragedy here. I do feel sorry for the mother. It isn't easy if your child has an array of issues. But I think it's tragic and insulting to the child that she is saying, actually, I'd prefer to have aborted or killed you than actually having you now. And now that I have you, I view you as a treatment injury, as an accident. Again, I think that's deeply, deeply insulting, and particularly to our Down syndrome community, who I said at the start, I think are just amazing, wonderful human beings with the same innate dignities, rights and liberties that all of us have. So anyway, there's just some thoughts there. Again, it's pretty heavy, and I'm seeing a whole lot of comments coming through, which is lovely, and we might switch back. We've got lots of people commenting on the Christmas front, and there's noting here by Abby, it's very much time. Oops, if I click, there we go. It's definitely time for the Christmas music, we're told, which is good. I'm just going to do one change of the settings here. There we go. Hopefully, yeah. Rosie saying that was born with cerebral palsy, so we're jumping topics here. Yeah, you wouldn't know it, but at the same time too, and obviously I can't speak to your direct experience, Rosie, but just like any of us, myself, anyone with Down syndrome, whatever the conditions are, we still are human and have a right to life. And yet this whole story that we're discussing is really a problem. And I think, Muddy Waters is right too. It is a problem of mindset. Again, we can have sympathy and understanding. I think we can understand the difficulties which will come with this situation. But the idea that you're saying, again, for the child who will read these articles in the future, I'd prefer you were dead, is just, I just think, very, very sad. So anyway, there is that. And thank you for, again, the comments all coming through. And again, so we're saying goodbye to my favouritely named person, Foo Dogs Trucking. You have a great day as well. Thought I'd jump to this topic also. This is basically an affirmation that New Zealand doctors involved with what they call gender-affirming care are basically rogues and are going rogue. So you'll know a few weeks ago the government decided that puberty blockers should no longer be given to vulnerable children experiencing gender dysphoria. First and foremost because there's little to no evidence that they work in the sense that, of course, they block puberty, but they're actually not doing anything more than conveying the child on to the next stage, which is cross-sex hormones and eventually mutilating surgeries. Second, as we know, and there's enough research coming out now, let's be clear, it's not absolutely 100% definitive, but there's enough research coming out which is saying by delaying puberty, there are bone density issues, possibly sterility for a number of people, incontinence issues, certainly emotional, psychological, developmental issues. Hence they ban puberty blockers, as they've done in a number of countries around the world. But here in New Zealand there's a group called PATHA. Now PATHA is very similar to the WPATH group. These are again radicals in the gender case, not just medical people, it's just an association, anyone can join it. But these are radicals who do believe in using experimental drugs and surgeries on children. It's basically abuse, let's call it what it is. But this group has been desperate to put out new guidelines. Now, since the government, as in guidelines of how to treat vulnerable young people, and as you'll imagine, the PATHA crew, and remember they don't just have to be medical doctors. One who's involved actually is Elizabeth Kerekere, the disgraced former Green MP. But they've been desperate to have new updated guidelines which promote their work. But they hit a hurdle recently when the government banned puberty blockers. And the Ministry of Health, and this is what this story is talking about, the Ministry of Health has said, hey look, you cannot or shouldn't be promoting puberty blockers anymore as part of the medical guidelines. Well, PATHA has basically given the Ministry of Health and the government, and I would argue the vulnerable gender dysphoric children, the proverbial middle finger. And they have basically said, screw you, we're going to publish our guidelines anyway, replete with all the rubbish, nonsense and lies around puberty blockers to say that they're perfectly safe and reversible. And that has to be said loud and clear. That is a lie. It's a bald-faced lie. It goes against the medical and scientific evidence, and it also goes against the ethics of the situation. You cannot ask for the consent of children and parents around experimental drugs, and doubly so when it involves children. But what this shows to you guys and all of us is that these doctors, these people involved with PATHA here in New Zealand, are rogue. They've gone rogue. They've gone completely rogue. We already knew that. This whole area of medicine, in inverted commas, was dangerous from the start, but their decision to release these guidelines without the Ministry of Health's approval and by remaining to talk about puberty blockers as perfectly fine shows that they're rogue, and they should be treated as such. The other quick element to it, I had to laugh darkly, is as you might expect, there's a whole lot of talk in their guidelines about making this New Zealand, well in their case Aotearoa specific. That has to be called out. There is nothing so unique about children in New Zealand that makes their medical care any different to children in Sweden or Finland, the Congo or Argentina. I don't know about you, but I'm getting actually quite tired of this Aotearoa or New Zealand centric view that somehow we have to view all issues through a New Zealand lens. It makes no sense at all. It does if you're talking biosecurity. It does if you're maybe talking around the climate, because every country has something slightly different. But, you know, we're all human. And the gender dysphoric qualities of a child, as I say, in Argentina or the Congo, Spain or Russia, is no different to here in New Zealand. So these guys are trying to hide behind, I would argue, the woke race-based language that is very prevalent these days to sort of make a New Zealand exceptionalism to then promote their own views. So really long way of me saying they're going, well, yes, the Brits, the Finns, the Swiss, the Swedish, and others are banning puberty blockers. A number of states in the US are banning them, but New Zealand's different. No, we're not. We're not that different. So basically, they're a bunch of crooks. Let's just be quite clear about this. But in a strange way, well, I think this will continue to put young people in danger. The fact that they've gone rogue shows just how rogue they are. And so that's a real problem. And I see Muddy Waters is asking too, are we going to be talking to Health New Zealand why PATH has put the Ministry of Health logo on their guidelines? We will be following that up, so people are maybe wondering what that is. So what Muddy Waters is referencing is obviously, well, as I just mentioned, PATHA has gone rogue. They've put out the guidelines despite the ministry asking them not to include puberty blockers. But the arrogance of these rogues is that they've also gone and put the Ministry of Health logo on their guidelines, which is explicitly wrong, because the ministry does not endorse such guidelines. So again, it just shows the roguish nature of what we're dealing with here. Not just Partha, but the roguish nature of these people who call themselves doctors and professionals and experts. Never forget, and Helen Joyce and Sal Grover, Carolee Smith, who we've had, Katie Faust and others, I'm thinking a lot of the guests we've had on the various podcasts here at Family First would say, this is an assault on vulnerable children. We're experimenting, well, not we, but these guys are experimenting on vulnerable young people. And the majority, we know, because we talk to detransitioners here at Family First, we know that actually by going through puberty, most of these dysphoric issues disappear. It's called growing up. It touches on what we were discussing right at the start around transhumanism, and that's what gender dysphoria, or those promoting it, are trying to actually engage in. Again, we can be more than what we are as humans. Well, no, we just be human. That's the simplest point of it. You go through puberty, most of these issues disappear. And the second side of it, which again these Partha activists and rogues always deny, is most of the time with gender dysphoric children, so children who think they're in the wrong body, usually, if not all the time, have an array of other mental health issues. As we know from a study coming out of, pretty sure it was Finland, fix those issues, address the depression or the anxiety and the loneliness, and actually gender dysphoria disappears. You don't have to pump a child full of toxic drugs or hormone suppressors, or eventually cut pieces off of healthy body. I mean, when you just think about it that way, it's quite sad and quite it's just exceptionally sad. Anyway, I'm just looking at all the various comments coming through. I like Sam. I don't know if you can see the whole comment there, but yeah, legally until a child can stand up and defend itself in court, it's a responsibility of their parents and not some quack. Well, I think so. But sadly too, Sam, and it's something that I've never quite worked out, and I've done a number of podcasts talking to people around this, is trying to understand why parents back this. And I think part of it is they're also told a lie, that if they don't indulge the gender dysphoria of the child will die. Look, again, there is no evidence of that. In other words, no evidence that actually these interventions make any difference on the suicide ideations of children. Again, there's a whole lot of other comorbidities or mental health issues that need to be addressed. The second, I think, sadly for some parents, they get kudos for this. Society at large says, oh, you've got a trans child or a gender dysphoric child. Oh, wow, gosh. So the feedback to the parent is generally quite positive. So I just think it's very, very sad. As Rosie's saying, they're not guinea pigs, just leave them alone. And, Catherine's right, there is a dishonesty in all of those. And I also agree with Fourth Adam. I think there will come a time of justice. I genuinely think, I'm hesitating here because I've never liked the phrase, the right side of history, and I'm not going to deploy that phrase here. But I genuinely believe we'll look back in 10, 20, 50 years at this and go, what on earth was society thinking? A sort of madness, if you will. Guys, I'm going to start wrapping it up there. As always, there's 50,000 more things, but I can address those on, I was going to say Friday, but on Thursday. But I'm just really grateful that you've joined me on this, as I say, 100th episode. But a reminder, of course, we've got lots of shows. Obviously, we've got Solid Ground, as you know. Well, I hope you know, you've got Daybreak on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays with Bob. I'm actually not going to be here this Thursday. There's a special guest. I'm actually overseas in Australia for a funeral. One of my aunties, as you might know from previous comments, has passed away. But there'll be a special guest instead on Thursday evening for political playback. As you also know, we've got our Substacks. Bob and I write frequently, Bob more than I. So if you want to go to substack.com, you can see what I'm writing, and similarly, you can see what Bob is writing as well. So no shortage of stuff. And as we saw at the start, if you were here from the first moment, you can watch, read and listen all and everything you need for Family First. As I say, we put out a huge amount of content at the moment. But guys, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for all your comments around these stories, all your thoughts around the appropriateness of Christmas music and a Christmas tree. I will now confess that we put our Christmas tree up on the weekend, a day before at the end of November, but we will probably start playing some Christmas music soon. But look, I just hope you have a wonderful day. It has been great having you not only today, but across 100 episodes. You can see from my smile, I think it's quite exciting, because when Bob and I sat down, well over a year ago, and talked about how we would expand our media reach, the idea of doing morning shows and then aligning the morning shows. So every morning, every weekday morning at 7:30, there's either Bob and I. And here we are, 100 episodes in Upper Treehouse. As I say, I'll get a video to you at some point so you can see what I see here. But I just hope you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you again on Thursday morning.